Almost over, almost over. This disastrous night shift week is almost over. Probably going to relax a bit more this weekend and work on some other things as well. But we should get one more stream in, talking about the one topic that's really been weighing on my mind since the news got back to me regarding New York. The state of New York passing the 70% mark with vaccinations for COVID. At least one dose, 70%, which is cool because the most vaccinated state in the country is Vermont, around 72%. Massachusetts is almost a 68%. Connecticut's a little behind the eight ball at 65%. But there's a whole bunch of things we can talk about with regards to what's next with the pandemic and everything. Did a pandemic rant earlier, but with New York passing the 70% mark and summer just around the corner, depending on, it feels like summer now. I mean, it's warm enough to go outside without a jacket around here. But depending on what your definition of summer is, we're heading into the summer. And some people are actually talking about watch out for autumn when we all have to go back indoors. But what I'll tell you is this. What COVID is going to change based on whether or not you're vaccinated. And it's time, if you haven't gotten your shots, it's time to get them. Because when the green flag waves, it's only green for the people that have their shots. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, a.k.a. MultimediaJay. I don't have much to stream about these days. Been playing some Neverwinter Nights over on Twitch. And also, but I've been thinking a lot about the YouTube streaming that I do and what it is that I do. With, of course, since I'm streaming in the middle of the night, who's even up to watch this stuff? Might get a lurker here and there. So the ability to do monologues relatively uninterrupted is basically what I'm doing with this stuff. I'm basically treating these streams as a replacement for vlogs. Kind of talking about what's going on here and there and trying to keep things topical. Talk about things kind of in like a radio show style format with this kind of stuff here. But the thing with streaming is that streaming has a lot of weaknesses to it. And which weaknesses you target in terms of overcoming them determines fundamentally just how useful streaming is to you. Although sometimes, just like videos that I thought were a good idea but weren't, so I deleted them, I usually will delete streams that I think are garbage instead of letting them continue to see the light of day. So the one I did yesterday, for example, with the sorry, not sorry in the title. Sorry, not sorry is something I wouldn't want to say. It's not something I really say or really like. So over the long haul, and YouTube, of course, is known for the long haul, it's not the sort of thing I want representing me. So I just threw the whole thing out. Maybe I had some intelligent points for some of the things I talked about, but I can always talk about them again in some other stream or make videos about them. It's not like it's the end of the world if I wind up deleting something off of my YouTube channel. Let's talk about something very important when it comes to tech stuff before we get into our discussion about the Pand-epilogue, the pandemic epilogue, and what's next here and there, and why you're thinking of getting a COVID vaccine. This is the time to get it if you haven't already. So I would actually consider yourself behind the eight ball if you haven't gotten it yet. So if you're in an area where there's one available, find a way to get it. Go out, get that appointment, get it, because the longer you wait, the riskier things get. And eventually, it's going to get to the point where if you have a problem with COVID, it's on you because you've been blowing off essentially something that's been available for months. How long does, especially here in the United States, how long does there need to be a glut of vaccine supply to the point where you can now go against, not even CDC, but Dr. Fauci's guidance from like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, whatever it is. Just months ago, you had people like Dr. Fauci saying, take the first vaccine you can get. They all offer really awesome protection, and you want the first one you can get because anything's better than nothing, or something like that. Not too good at a New York accent, but so I remember when Dr. Fauci was jumping on his soapbox and saying, take the first one you can get. It's better than nothing. Nowadays, if you want to pick a certain vaccine, then you can definitely go get it. In my case, my favorite was Moderna for a couple of reasons. Pfizer and Moderna. See, I started following this whole COVID vaccine thing here in the States with Pfizer and Moderna when Johnson & Johnson hadn't yet been approved yet. So I was like, oh, look, COVID vaccine, 2-dose thingy. So which of these two do I want to go after? I think Johnson & Johnson got approved after I was able to get the appointment for Moderna with the healthcare clinic in my area. So Here's the thing. The two rivals when I was looking at this were Pfizer and Moderna. I know Pfizer, of course, is the Viagra company. Pfizer's a big pharmaceutical giant. Moderna, what I learned about the company, is a lot more centered around the mRNA technology. They even have mRNA as the stock ticker. So this is as unscientific as all heck. But my rationale from my business background was that Moderna has more of a compelling interest in making a good COVID vaccine because they have more to lose if it flops. I mean, they focus heavily on mRNA technology. If they biff mRNA technology, they're going to make their own technology that the company's practically centered around look bad. As opposed to Pfizer, where if they flub this, they have Viagra, they have whatever stuff's in their product portfolio. They have all the stuff that, can serve as a safety net of sorts. Companies often like to diversify their portfolios in case a product starts flopping or whatever. It's all part of brand management and product management if you learn a few things about marketing. It's one of the reasons why there's there's more serious but could be jokey articles about how there's a handful of companies that are umbrella companies that own most of the brands that you think are competing against each other when you go grocery shopping. So many brands in the supermarket are actually owned by a handful of umbrella companies. And sometimes the companies split up for whatever reason, like Kraft, for example, split into Kraft Foods and Mondelez Foods and stuff like that. So Kraft may have meant something 5 years ago that's Mondelez now or something along those lines. But it's just corporate governance is definitely something that has taken over the supermarket shelves, at least when it comes to the national brands. If you're dealing with private labels or store brands or something along those lines, it's a different story altogether. But yeah, so a lot of times companies with lots of different types of products in their portfolios will want to have something that can, cover if something else starts flopping. And from everything I could read, Pfizer was in that position, but Moderna was not. And if you want the extreme example of why I tended to prefer Moderna, besides being a nerd, if you want a more extreme example, here's another name in big pharma that you might know about. Merck. Yeah, Merck. Yeah, big company there. If you dig around the Global Vaccine Alliance and you read about the COVID vaccines that never made it out of trials because they didn't do their job well enough, that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the COVID vaccines that don't work wound up in the dustbin of history because the companies abandoned development when they didn't do well in the trials. You find out that Merck actually had 2 candidates that never made it out of trials because they weren't doing their job well enough. And in some cases, they had unintended consequences. So it didn't work exactly the way that a COVID vaccine, people would think a COVID vaccine would work. There was some other weird stuff going on, things like that. You can dig around the Global Vaccine Alliance, go down to the bottom to find the discontinued or abandoned vaccine developments, and you can see what the failures were with this. The ones that made it to market are the successes. They're very rigorous safety testing and all kinds of other stuff is involved with these kinds of things. And it's interesting. Some people bring up that 70s vaccine snafu with regards to be careful with the COVID ones. The 70s were 50 years ago. I hate to break it to some people who don't think they're that old, or that it was that long ago. So, okay, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. Yeah, I know, right? Maybe there's some people that still listen to some 70s. Well, of course there's people that still listen to some 70s music. I mean, you got classic rock in there. You've got soft rock, yacht rock. You have disco maybe. If you want to do the YMCA at the ballpark or something. It is wild, though. The 70s were a half century ago. You're depending on what part of the 70s, you could be jamming to a 50-year-old song. But, all right, enough making people feel old. So, in a half century since the 70s, which were 50 years ago, you really think that the medical and the biotech and the pharma communities haven't learned from that? Yeah. Folks, a lot of times you got to keep your head on straight when people are trying to sell you a bag of goods. One of the ways you can keep your head on straight is by checking the dates. Someone sends you an article on the internet. Oh, this is so terrible. Check the date on the article. There are actually people out there, and I had a professor in college who trolled the whole class once. One of my CIS, a.k.a. Computer Information Systems professors, trolled the whole class one day because he gave us an article from 1992 and pretended it was something current, and a lot of people fell for it. And he's like, starts this big discussion about, look what's going on in the world of computers. And he's like, oh, by the way, check the date, 1992. Yeah, you always got to keep your head on straight. You always got to keep your head on straight when it comes to this kind of stuff. All right, little administrative thing before we get into the discussion, the meat of this discussion about the Pand-epilogue. So in the back, you can probably see the Amazon speaker sitting there. I'm going to mention this in a few more. Watch that. I'm going to mention this in a few more streams. So as you know, there's the issue with Amazon Sidewalk right now. As long as the Alexa app isn't updated to the point where I can turn off Amazon Sidewalk, my one and only Amazon speaker is going to be a paperweight on top of that speaker over there. So you can track through the streams I do on YouTube and Twitch, because that thing's going to be in the shot every single time until this is fixed, how long this is a problem. Just an update on that Amazon Sidewalk situation. I realize there's limits and security things to try and get past the whole, oh no, it's going to mooch off of your internet. Oh no, there might be security issues. But with what I know about, IT security and stuff, that's usually the way it goes, right? Someone finds a bug or an exploit in something that the developers were certain was locked down. Yeah, well, and then someone finds a way to find the one thing they didn't think of. So I wasn't interested in Amazon Sidewalk as a feature, and I'm not interested in it now. And I'm not the only one that thinks this way. I went and looked at Google Play's review. I went and looked at Google Play's review, or some Google Play reviews of the Alexa app, and there are people out there that are shutting their speakers off and switching to Google speakers because of Amazon Sidewalk. Now, I realize that Echo Dot is too old to have Amazon Sidewalk, but I know full well there's probably programmers at Amazon trying to put backward compatibility in there. So it launches for this amount of their product portfolio, but eventually support is extended back to older devices. Until I can shut off Amazon Sidewalk through my account without having to own a compatible device, I want to do it through a smartphone app. Until that happens, that thing's a paperweight. So keep an eye on that speaker and see how long that thing sits there not doing anything unplugged. And that'll give you an idea of how long Amazon is dragging their feet on fixing this issue. Now, so this whole thing about the Pand-epilogue and the Covidiot plague. The Covidiot plague is my cynical, sarcastic nickname for what COVID is going to turn into. Because how long does the vaccine have to make the rounds before you get to the point where you're either a breakthrough infection if you get it, or it's your fault because you just snubbed the vaccine for too long? There's three groups of people, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the whole situation with the pandemic. You have the people that got their shots, myself included there. You have the anti-vaxxers, and then you have the special group of people who medically cannot get vaccinated. The people that herd immunity usually protects. Now, if you're in the third group and you can't get this thing, and maybe you want it, and you can't get vaccinated, the sheltering in place you're doing, you might as well keep on doing it and see, hopefully you don't have any issues. Because if you're being super paranoid about the way the world is getting, as governments and politicians are waving the green flag, everything's, yay, yeah, we're getting back to normal now. If you were being suspicious, you were right to be suspicious. I actually feel terrible for these people because things are going to get worse before they get better. And at some point, getting COVID is going to turn into you were in the wrong place at the wrong time around the wrong people, or maybe you had the wrong friends. But it's going to turn into the most ugly form of dumb luck, one of them anyways, that one could subject themselves to. Like, I just can't believe this happened. Yeah, that's what it's going to be like. And it's been fun seeing people sound off because they agree with me on this. And I heard the thing, the guy in the comments talking about he got it last November and he still can't taste anything. Yeah, I mean, look, this is a year ago. People were getting eyebrows raised in their general direction because they were referring to it as the boomer remover and erroneously referring to COVID as an old people disease. We now know that that's not the case. the demographics of who ends up hospitalized or who ends up with symptoms that damage the quality of their life for a long period of time afterwards, like long COVID and things like that. We know those demographics have been changing as the vaccine rolled out. Here in Connecticut, I had that rant earlier about how essential workers lost their place in line, but Governor Lamont decided to simplify everything based on age, so older people got it first. Started with the elderly and at-risk populations, made sense if you're in a nursing home, things along those lines. That made plenty of sense. And then the demographics started getting younger and younger. And as the vaccine made the rounds, the people that were getting hospitalized because of it changed. Today, you'll find that people are going to the news media and they're saying it's the unvaccinated that are ending up in the hospitals. It's the young people that are ending up in the hospitals. So, and think about it, a lot of people talk about COVID in terms of, maybe, what if you survive it? Yeah, what if you survive it? How do you know you're going to survive it in one piece? That's the problem, is that the rules I've had for this pandemic are still very much in play. You don't know who has this thing. 1 week incubation period. People could pass it along to you and not even know they were infected. And you don't know what this thing's going to do to you if you get it. Now, among some of the things I've read about from some cases of people who've died from this thing, there were lung damage, cardiovascular complications, blood clots, young people having strokes. One woman's heart exploded or ruptured or whatever. It's just... Maybe there's a remote chance that you would have severe symptoms, but do you want to take that risk? That's the thing. And it gets even more interesting when you run into anti-vaxxers crying about the vaccine, because there might be a remote risk of some side effects from the vaccine. And they don't look at the numbers with regards to, okay, J&J had a problem with blood clots. Look at the significant digits involved in those numbers. Versus the virus itself is also known for cardiovascular complications and blood clots. So the odds are higher that you'll have those problems with the real deal as opposed to the vaccine. So it's feelings over facts. It's people whose emotions are essentially their God. You can't tell them anything unless it agrees with whatever their feelings are. It's ridiculous. Look, I'm going to be the voice of reason to everybody out there with this attitude amongst them. Look, the world is not always going to be something that you like. Life is not always going to be something that you like. There will be things in this world that are true that hurt your feelings. Your feelings are not the ultimate arbiter of what is right and wrong. So, it's just crazy, At its worst, some of these people have quieted down recently. But at its worst, we've had people out there, we've had anti-vaxxers that I see showing up in these things. At its worst, I couldn't even view an update story on the pandemic without somebody. I couldn't even view an update story on the pandemic without the comments being absolutely flooded with anti-vaxxers guffawing the story. It's just... And what about things like people buying fake vaccine cards? It's like, what? You'll spend money on something like that instead of getting the darn shot for free. By the way, it was a political fight to get that shot free in the first place. There were people posting articles when the vaccine was in development, like, oh, are ordinary people going to be able to get it? Or is it the sort of thing that, the rich and privileged are going to get? How are we going to make it so everybody can get this thing and not just the people that can afford it? That was an argument, in case you forgot. Wasn't that long ago, but that was an argument when the vaccine was being developed, was how are we going to get this out to everybody and not just the people with the deep pockets? Are we going to create a society where the people with the means are the ones that don't have to worry about? They can get vaccinated, but everyone else, oh well. It's just, even if you want to try and pretend to take some of these tinfoil head folks seriously, think about how selective their paranoia is. Classic example. The government is out to get me with this jab. Oh, really? Think about it this way. How come I don't hear people getting super paranoid about how quickly the green flag is getting waved? Okay, 70% of New Yorkers have at least one dose of the vaccine. Too soon to go back to 100%? Well, I hear that from time to time, but not nearly as much, and from different groups of people, not nearly as much as I hear people think, the vaccine, oh no. I hear that crap all the time. It's crazy. Selective paranoia, it's nuts. If you want to concoct conspiracy theories, it is extremely easy to concoct conspiracy theories about the way politicians have talked about this thing and the way they've handled it, especially when you listen to the speeches of governors and other politicians talking about things from a collective perspective, not about your individual health as a citizen, but about our collective ability as a civil society to keep the hospitals running. Oh, yeah, I mean, you could end up in the hospital, you can end up on a ventilator, you could survive with a huge hospital bill or your insurance company balking at paying stuff. You could go through the rigmarole with the insurance company and everything. Oh, yeah, but at least the ICUs have enough beds so that there's no triage decisions having to be made in the hospitals. That's what makes the politicians look good and gets them reelected. See? It's not hard. So why do I not hear that from the people that are bound and determined to see the bad in everything, including this medical miracle that is mRNA technology finally finding a way to make this viable right in time for this thing? No, seriously, look at the history of mRNA technology. And if that still spooks you, J&J, viral vector, different, older technology in terms of delivering the payload that provokes an immune response. But folks, one of the things you got to acknowledge in life, not everybody in life is going to make sense. Not everybody in life is going to have your best interest in mind, or they may think they do, but they don't. So the sooner you come to grips with the fact that life is not a fairy tale, people don't always make sense, people don't always do the right thing, there are some bad people out there who will try and lead you astray. Once you come to grips with that, hey, you stop being surprised so much when somebody tries to snooker you like that. Anyways, let's look at some numbers for Connecticut here, and let's link up the browser and put some things back on the screen here. So let me just tell you, locally in my area, Connecticut, about 65% vaccinated with at least one dose in Connecticut. We've gotten to the point where the pop-up clinics have administered so many doses and there's so much vaccine supply that we're in a position now where everything's going back to the healthcare facilities. So you just go, unless you go to Walmart or a pharmacy or something, the pop-up clinics are going to switch over to healthcare places offering vaccines and stuff. It depends on the healthcare provider and, things like that. What I liked about getting my doses through the system is that there was people to call 911 if something bad happened, or people that could do something because it was, nurses and doctors in the building instead of, it's a pharmacy. Another thing too that I liked was, is that you don't have the bureaucratic hurdle of trying to get that into your medical record. So it just goes right into the system that it just gets added to your vaccination record. You don't have to worry about, what happens if I lose the card or something along those lines. So of course there is an administration system depending on the state for having records of having gotten your doses. But yeah, so we're at the point here in Connecticut where, okay, if you go through the private sector, you can pretty much choose your shot by going to Walmart of all places. But even smaller grocery stores are openly advertising walk-ins for COVID vaccines. They tell you what they have. Hey, schedule your appointment today. Get your COVID shot. We have Moderna, or something along those lines. This is New England, so Moderna is a New England company, so there might be a bit more of a, them trying to have a little supply chain stuff going on around here. But it's the sort of thing where pretty much if where you're going has a pharmacy, ask if they have a COVID shot. It's just, and if you're in an area where, the critical mass has been achieved with who's going to be like, give me the shot, give me the shot, give me the shot. And we're moving on to the less insanely, I want it as soon as possible crowd, and there's more of a supply in the local area. You pretty much can say, oh, okay, I want this one. We'll go there to get it. We'll set up the appointments and things along those lines. Just that the thing is, though, a lot of this is still some serious, first world privilege here, because I've been following the situation in India, and I'll tell you, it really puts a new perspective on you to see these people sneering at the vaccine here in America when you see the camera footage of the overcrowded hospitals in India and what they've had to deal with. And then you learn about the vaccine technologies and how they all relate to each other, and you find out that the viral vector vaccines being manufactured over there are going to have logistical challenges compared to mRNA. Because that's one of the advantages of the new mRNA stuff is what you specifically have to make in order to make a vaccine. So it's crazy. It's crazy. You will never, when you learn about how parts of the world that are struggling just to get vaccinated, what it's like over there, you will never view some rando on Facebook belly aching about the vaccine the same way ever again. Much like a lot of other things that have happened here in America in the last couple of years, this brouhaha of what's going on right now has basically gotten us to the point where you pretty much know who the crazies are in your local neck of the woods. Look at what they're saying on social media. So, oh, yeah, there's a pop-up clinic for the virus. I'm not getting it. Comment section goes crazy on Facebook. And then they're dumb enough to put down where they work. Oh, this company hires people who have public meltdowns about COVID vaccines. I'm not buying anything from them. I'm not working from them. Let them complain about a labor shortage when in reality it's just like, oh, I don't want to work for these people because look at who they hire. Look, my coworkers would be completely nuts if I worked there. Why do I want to work there? So it's interesting how things have gone here in this part of Connecticut with regards to the vaccine rollout. It's a situation where you can go to the private sector, pick what you want. You can go to Walmart or a supermarket pharmacy and get your shots. Or you can go, once the conversion's complete, you'll be go to a hospital or a medical office or something along those lines and do things through your doctors or what have you. Or maybe, some places will actually have enough supply on hand to have stuff available for walk-ins there, too. But the bottom line is, not hard to get the darn vaccine. And in some parts of the country, like Connecticut and whatnot, here in the Northeast, we're among the most vaccinated states in the country over here. You can actually pick what you want. A matter of fact, you know what? I think Northeastern states should very aggressively, promote vaccine tourism. If people have a hard time, if people live somewhere where they have a hard time getting their shots, let them come to New England and get a walk-in. Now, how about these streamers coming from, overseas or something where there aren't as many vaccines going around? Come to America and get the vaccine. If you want, stay for a month and get a 2-dose mRNA. I mean, we should be, there really are no national boundaries when it comes to getting this thing under control. Because as we're seeing right now with, for example, what's going on in Vietnam with the outbreak there, right after, of course, companies moved production to Vietnam, when China was having lots of problems last year, you have a situation on your hands here where we're having problems with shortages of stuff, supply chain hiccups all over the place, especially with electronics. But here's the thing. You have supply chain hiccups with electronics all over the place. Do you want those to end? Or do you want this to turn to a giant game of whack-a-mole? You get a bunch of stuff made in China. Oh, wait, China's having problems. Goes to Vietnam. Vietnam's having problems. Goes to India. Oops, India's having problems. Cambodia. Oh, Cambodia's having problems. Bangladesh. Oh, Bangladesh's having problems. Do we want to be playing supply chain whack-a-mole and all the associated costs indefinitely? No. Let's get the vaccine out there and get people their shots. Now, the charities that want to try and take, vaccine doses to parts of the world that might have trouble affording them, by all means, 2 thumbs up for that kind of stuff. It's a global pandemic. We're all in this together. You know, fundamentally, you can't really ignore the impact that the rest of the world has on the markets, which affect your ability to buy things. You know, do you want shortages indefinitely because production keeps getting moved because there's a flare-up in the area where the plants are that manufacture your hard drives, your SSDs, your computer memories, your smartphones, something along those lines? No, I mean, empathy is probably the best thing you can have with this vaccine rollout. You know, put yourself in the other guy's shoes and, you know, have a darn heart, for Pete's sake. Be a decent human being. Because our own limitations, now that we have the technology, our own limitations are the biggest thing holding us back from being past this thing. The question is, how do we overcome them? Let's get some numbers on the screen here. The meat of the discussion from and what inspired me to do this discussion in the first place. Let's go over to something I posted on Twitter earlier. I linked to the browser earlier. Here's Covidiot now. I've been keeping an eye on the statistics here. Also, they get some stuff from the New York Times and the CDC, and I've been keeping an eye on how they actually how they get their data and stuff like that. I've been watching this map. I saw it turn red with the winter outbreak and everything. Matter of fact, let's move a few things around and get my pointer on the screen again here. So yeah, I saw this turn red, and now it's gone back to everything was gold, and you still got Wyoming that is orange. Maybe they'll drop down later on, but they have a couple of counties where there's outbreaks going on, and then similar size in terms of around the 600,000 residents mark, give or take, like 20,000 people. You have Vermont. I saw this. We had the news earlier that New York is lifting restrictions after they hit the 70% mark on on at least one dose of the vaccine. But here is Vermont turning green. Vermont turning green on this is low risk. The original label for this category was on track to contain COVID. And so you're talking about daily new cases per 100K at 1. And as you see down here, an infection rate, I have my pointer. Good. Infection rate of 0.67. So for every one person, they infect on average less than one person. So when this number is below 1, the virus is losing ground. So it's one of those things where you think about when you're growing up and you're sitting in math class bored and you're like, learning decimals. How is this stuff ever going to be useful to me? Well, the infection rate is something where decimals do make a difference because it snowballs if this is too far above 1. So here's what I screened because I wanted to just, show that Vermont, we'll see if Vermont stays green or if there's some kind of flare up somewhere that turns it gold again. But as things continue to drop, because the vaccine makes the rounds, we're going to start seeing green show up elsewhere on the map. I think this CNMI is in Northern Marianas Islands. It's the U.S. territories in the Pacific Ocean, sparsely populated, so a little bit of baked-in social distancing in terms of stopping the virus that way. But let's actually look at Vermont. This is Covidiot now, looking at some nice things here. Here is what Vermont looks like nowadays with all this stuff going on. 1 per 100 grand, 0.67. Positive test rate, vaccinated 72.5%, and half the state is green. Of course, again, rural state, built-in social distancing. Let's go to Connecticut's numbers, which I'm a lot more familiar with. Gold. Yeah, well, gold isn't good on this. So 65.3% with 1 plus dose. Daily cases are down to 1.5 per 100K, but we've been one of the most vaccinated states in the country and also highly, highly aggressive with other containment measures like lockdowns and social distancing and mask mandates and stuff along those lines, which might be part of the reason why I've seen such fiery arguments on social media. About masks and stuff, because we were really gung-ho about it. And so anybody who wanted to start a big, start a big argument on social media had plenty of material to work with. So I've been looking at these numbers and keeping an eye on them and seeing the progression. Saw the 10s turn into 5s, the 5s down to 2s, the 2s down to 1s for infection or cases per 100 grand, which takes out the population difference for rural versus urban and stuff and scales it per 100,000 residents. So you don't have a situation where all the cities look like they're giant plagued metropolises. So, and you're always safe in the country. The truth is, you're not always in danger in the city if you play your cards right. You're not always safe in the country. So it all depends on where this thing is going. And so Another thing, a very important thing as we head into summer, there's going to be somebody on the internet somewhere, daily new cases per 100 grand, that's going to bring up this curve and say, oh, well, look at what happened last summer. So 2.2 cases on June 25th, 2020. Now we're down to 1.5 now. So it didn't make much of a difference, did it? Actually, one thing you got to remember when it comes to numbers are arcane and synthetic if you don't know what's in them. So things start showing up at the beginning of 2020. It hits Connecticut. Boom. Lockdown time. Shutting down businesses, non-essential stuff, drive the social distancing, mask mandates, the whole 9 yards, overcoming supply chain problems with masks. Now, I will openly admit, very early on in 2020, I was a bit nervous about wearing masks because people were panic buying N95 masks and hospital workers were having trouble getting them. So I didn't want to make the problem worse. Once viable cloth masks became a thing and I found a SKU that worked really, really well, that became my SKU of choice for pandemic masks. I have a video right here on this YouTube channel, Geekhouse 5S, the pandemic mask edition. I still have that specific SKU of mask as my preferred SKU. If I want to wear a mask, that's probably what I'm wearing. Still have all those. And they're not worn out or anything, so I'll probably keep them for a while. Maybe after all this is over, I'll keep them around for allergy season, or if I'm working on something dusty or something. Start sneezing. I might start sneezing. Let's just wear a mask. Certainly gotten used to it. Found ways to function wearing masks with glasses without the glasses fogging up. Although I bought anti-fog stuff off of Amazon when there was a run on them, and the price was cranked up to nearly $20 a bottle. But the key thing here is whenever you're dealing with analytics and data and insights, you need to know what's in your numbers. If you run a manufacturing facility, for example, and you can manufacture 100 widgets an hour, what is involved in that 100 widgets an hour? Are people cutting corners? Are they following procedure? Are they working safely? Are you running the risk of quality issues with what you're making? Are you running the risk of workers' comp expenses because people are not being safe? Are you doing all of that? So it's not just about the fact that your plant can manufacture 100 widgets an hour. It's about what goes into that 100 widgets an hour. Are there inefficiencies or other causes for concern? Are there problems that could crop up because of the way things are running? The same goes here with the way things were with the cases per 100 grand. What was involved in dipping the number this low last summer? A lot of stuff that isn't around now. This is extremely important, too, with some of the people I know who are vaccine hesitant that just want to wear masks until they're absolutely certain that they can get it, maybe I'll get a vaccine. The vaccine hesitant who want to just wear a bunch of masks all the time, those masks are part of the equation. Those masks are part of our ability to contain this thing in the pre-vaccine era. Let us not forget, stores cut back their hours if they were 24 hours, something like that. They tried to hire people for cleanup shifts because they would clean and sanitize the stores. There were extra cleanings and sanitation going on, scrubbing surfaces and all kinds of other stuff in order to help contain this thing. That's a cost that businesses are going to want to get rid of once they think they can safely do so. So at some point, things are going to become dirtier as stores go back to the way they used to keep themselves clean before they did all this extra scrubbing because of the pandemic. So you have that. You also have masks are something that works when everybody's wearing them. You look at for example, the issues that prop up with droplets and stuff when one person's wearing a mask and the other isn't. So you have that to consider. A well-enforced mask mandate would have had people wearing decent masks, would have everyone wearing some decent kind of mask. When you're the only one still wearing masks in the Walmart because everyone else took theirs off because Walmart policy focuses more on employees than customers and not accosting customers to ask them personal medical questions, it's a different environment. It's a different environment than a year ago when you had more people wearing masks, more sanitation going on, and more additional measures besides the vaccine. What do we have this summer as we approach this like 1.5 that we have right now? What do we have now? We have the vaccine. So what was involved in the summer dip last year? All those pre-vaccine measures, countermeasures to the virus. How many of them are still around? The extra cleaning and sanitation might still be a thing if businesses haven't silently backed off on it or discontinued it, or people don't do it as much because they think that we're out of the woods. You had extra sanitation. You had hand sanitizer everywhere. You had more people wearing masks. I can tell you, masks are gone in a lot of areas I go nowadays. Makes me hope that we don't have some anti-vaxxer lying about their vaccination status in places where they think they can get away with it. Because, the masks, they are gone. Walmart, Target, supermarkets, unless it is mandated like at a medical office or something, and even then, I still see people being annoyed or arguing from time to time. You're pretty much, the whole honor code thing with masks, no. The 9-to-5ers had to figure this out too when they decided to revise their mask guidance to allow the fully vaccinated to take their masks off. The way they did that, of course, was a self-certification that doubles as an associate sign-off. If you lie about your vaccination status, you're falsifying documents. See ya! I'm sure there's other companies doing that behind the scenes as well. That's been the pattern when I've read about mask guidance for retail stores and for businesses. A lot of them have focused more on getting their own workforce vaccinated than asking every customer, hey, if you're not vaccinated, you should put a mask on. Yeah, like that's going to work. That's the thing. One bad apple spoils the bunch. When the mask guidance from the CDC was relaxed, that was the open door for bad apples to spoil the bunch. You got somebody who is so selfish that they don't care if they accidentally give COVID to a bunch of vulnerable people who then end up in the hospital or dead from it. You have somebody who's that selfish. Do you really think they're going to give a darn about others enough to follow an optional mask requirement if there isn't some threat of punishment? So, what conditions exist now versus a year ago? That is key. That is extremely important when it comes to anybody who might use this summer dip from last year as some kind of talking point about the vaccine. The pre-vaccine countermeasures were our main tool to make this happen. And even then, once winter hit and people were in closed areas more often, vaccine starts making the rounds with first responders and vulnerable folks. Then Connecticut, thanks to the federal muscle increasing the supply, the nightmare situation that I thought would happen for essential workers didn't happen. Thank you, President Biden. Little boost here, but now crash as we head into the summer. Now let's look at this infection rate, the thing I said where the decimals matter. Here's the very beginning. Oh, it's going crazy. 2.0 something. Lock down the state. Boom. Now here's the thing. This is a measure of every person who gets COVID. How many other people are they infecting? If you're up around 2, like we were before the lockdowns when this thing was completely unmitigated, and who knows how much worse it would have gotten if we had gone total laissez-faire with it. Hands off, for those who don't know economic terms. Here's what that means if it's a 2. Every person that gets COVID infects 2 other people. So the first person gets COVID, they infect 2 people. 3. Then they infect 2 people each. 6. 2 people each. 12. 24. 48. 90. 96. Keeps doubling. It's an out-of-control outbreak. Completely wild and crazy. So, non-essential businesses closed, mask mandates, all the pre-pandemic stuff. But voluntary compliance still has a role to play in where this goes. So the results vary depending upon the state and the culture of the people that are in it. So, boom. Now, around summertime last year, keep in mind, we had a good summer, but then things went wild in the fall. So, in more realistic terms, besides the 2 at the no mitigation yet part of the initial outbreak. 1 would mean the virus is treading water. More than 1 means it's spreading slowly, and the speed increases the more above 1 you get. And then below 1 means it's losing ground. And if it's significantly below 1, we're talking about the state being on track to contain COVID. So, crash! Summertime rolls around. Some of the essential workers like myself go back to work, but people are outside more and stuff. We have a trough here where it wasn't so bad. False assurance. Oh, see, it's not so bad, but it was already going back up by the time the 4th of July was approaching. July into August, substantial, now getting into high territory, notably above 1, as the thing starts gaining ground. September into October. Now November, let's scroll up. This balloons, small, with decimals before this balloons in terms of cases per 100 grand. So, heading into the holidays, some little bumps around, Christmas and whatnot, and then little dip there, little dip there, and then bump there, which then we got that bump there. Now, what I saw earlier over here was a repeat of this trough, and it looked like the infection rate was going to go back up. But with the most recent data, it looks like it tapered a bit. So there's some areas where the data might change because it's still being processed. But it looks like this trough is not as shallow or not as short-lived as this one was. Good. We can thank the vaccine for that. That's a big change. What's the countermeasure that's in play? Largely the vaccine. Next question I have, where does this go and where does COVID go when the vaccine is the primary or exclusive countermeasure still in place? And that would be green flag status. Restrictions lifted. The extra sanitation stops being a thing. Hand sanitizer might not be, everywhere. Masks are gone, the whole 9 yards. Literally all that's left in terms of countermeasures is the vaccine. Where does this go and where does COVID go? That's the big question. There's some other data in here like ICU capacity and do we have 1 dose or all doses or things or both doses, blah, blah, blah. The Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccine throws a bit of a wrench into comparisons because it's a one and done here. And here's your cases and trends and things along those lines. Now, again, with the numbers, what goes into the numbers? I mean, if the contact tracing starts being scaled back because the vaccine's making the rounds and we've hit critical mass, what happens to these numbers? That's the thing. And as we mentioned in the pandemic rant last go-round, there was an article in the Washington Post. There was the article in the Washington Post where people were actually recalculating the numbers to remove the effects of the vaccine and finding out that among the unvaccinated, things are still just as dangerous. So you have a situation of choose your friends wisely in that case. If you know somebody's an anti-vaxxer when it comes to COVID and you don't have your shots, stay away or get your shots. And just hope you don't become a breakthrough infection. Better yet, these people that are so antagonistic are revealing so much stuff about their character. You got to ask yourself, why do you want to be friends with someone like that? I mean, isn't that what life is all about? Evaluating your relationships and deciding who you want to associate with and who you don't? Evaluating your options. You want to be romantically involved in someone. Who do you want to be romantically involved with? Can you get romantically involved with them? You want to work somewhere? Do you want to work there? What people do you want to be working with? So even if you have a job and it's not the best job, that you might want, it's not the best job for you and you're just staying around for a paycheck, what kind of job are you looking out for? What kind of people are you looking out for in order to work with? What kind of friends do you have? That was a big thing when I was growing up. People saying choose your friends wisely and don't get in with the wrong crowd. And now we have that meaning a lot more things nowadays. So you have all of this going on. And it's nothing unusual, though. Choose your friends wisely and choose who you associate with wisely. So we think about, for example, the other countermeasures go away. All that's left is the vaccine. We go back to pre-pandemic everywhere. Restrictions lifted. Maybe some people are saying, we're heading towards herd immunity. We end up with flare-ups and stuff in various communities where the vaccine can make the rounds. I talked about this, or where the virus can make the rounds, excuse me. I talked about this last time that it's like crimes of opportunity. If you ever see people have problems at car break-ins and stuff like that, a lot of times around here, we'll have a wave of car break-ins, and then somebody out there is going to say, well, and then the police get involved, and then they find out that a lot of the people whose cars got broken into actually didn't lock their doors. And the police are like, what the heck? Why are you not locking your doors? It's a really basic thing. I mean, here's the thing. In today's world of fobs and stuff, you may be able to lock your door just by walking to the edge of the house and pushing the button. Oh, I forgot to lock my door. It's just, depends on the size of your house, how far away your driveway is. You may not even have to walk all the way back out to your car in order to lock the doors if you forgot. So I imagine there's probably some police out there in certain towns and municipalities that are even more dumbfounded when people's cars get broken into because they didn't lock their doors. Crime of opportunity, whoever is the easy mark, that's who the perpetrator goes after. It's whoever is easy to affect like that. And I think the virus is kind of a microscopic version of that these days. Who's the easy mark? So if you're an anti-vaxxer who's going, getting all emotional about all of this, you're the easy mark. If you don't have your shots yet and you associate with people who put themselves at risk, then you're part of that. It's a thing where it goes around however it can, and you become part of how it goes around and who it affects. So but I've talked about this in terms of choose your friends wisely, but it's not just about that. When the only countermeasure still in place is the vaccine, the extra sanitation goes away, the masks are gone, etc. You can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time around the wrong person and be subjected to it. Oh, the person in front of you at the Walmart at the self-checkout or whatever, they're not vaccinated, but they're an anti-vaxxer and they're lying about their vaccination status, and nobody is going to hold them to account. You were too close. You now have it because you didn't get your shots. Maybe in a bathroom. One of the things, you go to use a public restroom somewhere, one of the things that people were worried about with COVID in bathrooms is, number one, people who are infected but not yet showing symptoms shed the virus when they use the bathroom. That's the first. I mean, people. There's a conspiracy theory about spike protein shedding that people have rambled about, but I wonder if that might be just kind of a parody or kind of a back of your mind Freudian slip type thing, because shedding was used to describe COVID. With regards to sewage technicians, we're finding that people who didn't know they'd been infected yet would start shedding the virus before they developed symptoms. So virus would actually show up in sewage before people would show symptoms. It's an odd way of testing to see if somebody has it and you don't know it yet. Obviously, a pre-vaccine form of scientific knowing who has it before they know they have it. That's a thing. But one of the other things that people were concerned about, besides, of course, so they're shedding virus when they do a number 1 or 2 or whatever. The other things that people were worrying about was when you flush a toilet. How does that not cause droplets to go airborne all over the place? That's one of the things the Nidavirus had to talk about with regards to their own mask policies. Yeah, don't take your mask off in the bathroom. It's actually worse because of the flushing toilets. And also, don't forget we can save on paper towels by putting in those air blower dryers. Oh, yeah, those two. Droplets. Get those airborne, and whether it's from drying your hands or from whatever. But, people were worried about bathrooms with this thing for a while now, and how they spread everything. In various ways the virus could spread in a public bathroom. So, okay. You got somebody who's infected, doesn't know it yet. You don't have your shots. Toilet flushes. Things go airborne. Breathing in. Oops. Especially if there's no masks involved anymore, because people are taking their masks off because they think everything's over. So, I think if I could probably take a look. Let me just take a look here. Don't have to get the browser back on screen again. Let's see. COVID unvaccinated danger. Let's see. The Unseen Risk, it's from ADN. It's from May 29th. Is this a reprint of what went? Yeah, it's from it's the Anchorage Daily News. I should probably put this. It looks like a non-paywalled article. Yeah, this is basically, it's like when the Associated Press, let's put this on Twitter. It's like when the Associated Press it's like when a local radio station republishes an AP story from the Associated Press. So why don't we just put this on Twitter right now? because the Washington Post article was paywalled, but if the Anchorage Daily News is doing a repost of that weeks after it posted, then, this could be a way, if you're at your limit of free articles or whatever. I mean, here is something you could do that as well. Yeah, someone at George Washington University, and they actually looked at the numbers, and they factored out the vaccinated and found out things hadn't improved much since January. So boils down to don't be the wrong person, and don't be around the wrong people, and don't be around the wrong people, or at wrong place, wrong time, wrong people, the whole 9 yards. If everything's wrong, oh well. 3 weeks ago, CNN, experts say those who are not inoculated against COVID-19 should not rely on protection on people from who they are, or from people who are, etc., etc. We're worried about Memorial Day weekend back then. I get some stuff of that. You just look it up. I mean, Google search COVID unvaccinated dangers and search the news results. What's this from the Chicago Tribune? This is exclusive content reserved for our subscribers, okay? See ya. I'm not subscribing to a Chicago newspaper or digital newspaper just for one article here. Mask mandates, Yeah, there we go. A lot of people reposted all of that and whatnot. Yeah. June 4th, 2021, ABC News. COVID-19 still poses severe risk to unvaccinated teens. CDC director, blah, blah, blah. I'll read those afterwards, but that's the world we're heading towards. So you have New York, 70% with at least one dose. You have Vermont turning green on the COVID Act Now map at 72%. Those numbers keep going up as more people get their shots, more people get fully vaccinated. The virus runs into more dead ends, but and so that'll make it sting even more if you somehow get it because you're not vaccinated. We're talking about your odds being, low as it can be that you'll get it and you still find a way to get it. Why would that not bother the heck out of you if you were unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time around the wrong person, maybe in the wrong bathroom or something when the toilet flushed or whatever? Look, I say this as somebody who lives in a liberal state where people were freaking out about this, according to most Republicans. State Republicans always thought that people were overreacting to this stuff. We're in a situation now where you pretty much can pick what shot you want and go get it. Walk-ins even. And as much as I try to avoid saying this because it's one of the rallying cries of anti-vaxxers, it is not hard for someone to do your research and pick a walk-in somewhere where you can get the shot you want, if you prefer one. Or if you just want to get one, get it done. One guy at the 9 to 5, there were leftover appointments for Johnson & Johnson at our last vaccine clinic on site. He just like, okay, there we go. The fully vaccinated 2 weeks. That was easy. Yeah, it is. But what's not going to be easy is where the world's going to go when COVID-19 turns into a Covidiot plague. And pretty much it's a dead giveaway that you don't have your shots. You're around somebody who is putting themselves at risk too much. The old rules are still in play. If the virus can get around, it's going to get around. It's going to do the same things it was doing before, even before the vaccine made the rounds. You don't know who has it. You don't know what this thing's going to do to you if you get it. Same rules still in play. Still a 1 week incubation period, and there are variants and mutations out there. The latest one that I was reading about is resistant to existing treatments for COVID if you go into the hospital with it. So, and who knows what other mutations are going to bring. That's why the medical community is keeping a very close eye on vaccine effectiveness versus newly surfaced variants. And of course, I decided not to laminate my vaccine card in case there's some booster I got to get somewhere. But hey, I'll get the darn booster. Oh, wow. I might have some more days of arm pain versus potential lung damage from this thing or cardiovascular side effects. Gee, I wonder which one I should spring for. Give me the darn shot in the arm. What more needs to be said? I don't know if much more can be said. I mean, I couldn't even do this discussion without it seeming redundant in some ways versus the last rant I did with regards to this. But bottom line, The vaccine exists. We have the technology. It's out in the wild. And in areas like where I am, you can pretty much pick what you want and go get it. Go get it. You're going to want to do that sooner rather than later, because the question is, when do the remaining pre-vaccine countermeasures go away as the states wave the green flag? Enough people are vaccinated. Let's all sing victory songs and blah, blah, blah. Okay. When does the extra sanitation go away? The masks have pretty much already gone away in many, many places. When does the social distancing requirement go away? As if people are even still following that stuff. I can tell you, I go to Walmart, I don't see anybody, even before the new CDC guidance, I didn't see anybody following those arrows on the floor for shop one way. You know, I don't see people standing on the little dots on the floor, many of which have started wearing off from too many walking on them. Look, the world is changing. If you're vaccine hesitant, go get your darn shots. You're going to want to sooner rather than later, especially if you're doing like Moderna or something with that 1 month ramp up period between the two doses. You know, Novavax is pursuing authorization to get in on the action with a protein subunit vaccine later this year. Pfizer's popping up in my area more so than it did before. Most tied to cold storage out of all of them. It used to be a thing they had to head towards Boston or Providence in New York or something to find anywhere around here. Around here was mostly Moderna until Johnson & Johnson was making the rounds. So, but even Pfizer's making its way out here in various ways, even through medical groups. There's cold storage available for the doses. So, just keep an eye on the local scene and, you know, get something, darn it. If you don't have it by now, what are you waiting for? Now, there are people out there that for medical reasons can't get vaccinated. I feel very, very sorry for them because I know this thing's going to get worse before it gets better. We got to see just what happens to the anti-vaxxers when the other, you know, countermeasures go away and it's only the vaccine in play. You know, sanitation goes back to normal. The mask's already gone. Everything else gone. Everything very much pre-pandemic. What's that going to look like? Do you want to find out what that's going to look like? I don't think you should. I think, you know, we have the technology. It's there. It was one, like I'll say, I've repeated myself a couple of times with these rants, but I'll say this again. A year ago, when we didn't have the vaccine, getting this thing would have meant something. Today, with the darn technology being a thing and the distribution being a thing, it means something completely different if you come down with this thing. So, I don't think Covidiot plague is too strong of a word to use. It's going to get to the point eventually where, you know, the people that are getting this thing, if they're not a breakthrough infection, it's like if we were dogs and we were trying to make excuses for the ones that got rabies. It's like, seriously. Bottom line, cdc.gov, ladies and gentlemen, get some information on vaccines, talk with your doctor, go to the pharmacy, ask around about where you can get the darn things and go get one. Because as the summer progresses, and especially as we head into fall, you're going to want to get that taken care of sooner rather than later, because we know things went back up last year in the fall. I'm curious what'll happen when we start getting forced indoors again. Now, there was something actually from Scott Gottlieb, who's one of the MDs that talks about this kind of thing. He says this on Twitter. Fed chairman's COVID outlook seems pessimistic. More likely we'll continue to see low prevalence this summer, with perhaps outbreaks in isolated areas of low vaccination. Risk of new Delta variant rises in the fall, but the risk will be regional, clustered in pockets of low immunity, which means low vaccination, by the way. The risk from Delta would be to the fall, but I'm still hopeful that even as we see vaccination rates taper off in the summer as prevalence declines, there will be a surge in vaccination heading towards the fall as people return to work and school and more seek out vaccines. Don't wait until the fall, folks. It's here. Go for it. You can pretty much pick what you want in certain parts of the world. And think about the people that are in parts of the world that can't. And ask yourself, if I was in their shoes and they found out that I was like this, what would they think of me? You know? Doesn't take much. I mean, this is a very connected world. You can jump on YouTube and watch something like NDTV, is in Indian TV, an Indian cable news network type thing. And I've seen the coverage of the coronavirus outbreaks in India, and the overcrowded hospitals. And, you know, that was a shot of reality that hit me pretty hard. Almost as hard as the side effects from Moderna. But all of this, by the way, preferable to being a jerk who ends up with this thing. So, cdc.gov for vaccine resources. Take a look. Join the fun. Or at least join the group of people that I know can take masks off and things like that. But I'm already taking it off. Well, people can take masks off and not put themselves at risk in the process. Because didn't we run into this last year where people were like, well, it's summer, we're outdoors, and then they got some nasty surprises. No. Science, ladies and gentlemen, trust the science. Trust the science. And remember, the people and the scientists coming up with this stuff and the scientists working on this stuff are people trying to work hard and make stuff that makes society better. There are people going to work just like you might be. You know? One thing that we tend to do as human beings when we have a problem with someone else is we tend to dehumanize them and forget the things we still have in common with them. Oh, they're the evil whatever. No, actually. So you may think what you want about scientists and people researching stuff like this, but they're working on stuff just like you work on stuff. You're not getting away from the fact that we're all in this together. We're all human beings, and we're all trying to get this thing into the history books where it belongs. So make sure you're on the right side of history and science as we continue to progress to this stuff. COVIDactnow.org, by the way, if you want to watch those maps for yourself. I'm legit curious when the other Northeast states start turning green. And we'll see how this progresses, especially as fall might start rolling around. Problem is, though, I think there's a point of no return with regards to state regulations. If the masks are gone now, what happens when the governors in the fall are like, well, maybe we need to start doing this again? Yeah. I don't think that's going to go over very well. Be on the right side of history. Be on the right side of science, ladies and gentlemen. And most importantly, as Bill and Ted so excellently put it, be awesome to one another and party on, dudes. This is the last stream I want to do about this kind of stuff for a while. And maybe the last stream I want to do for any amount of time. You know, there's other things I want to be doing. Some will involve videos, some will involve short form. And then there's, of course, I want to clean the darn house up. Things that aren't, and then of course there's equipment too that isn't, it's in the box because I'm not getting around to making videos about it. We got to fix that. Lots of things to do. I shouldn't be barreling away streaming in the middle of the night indefinitely like this. Let's get to it. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.